one recommended in units 202, 203, 204, and 291 of Lyon County, and then Paradise Valley of Humboldt County.
Okay, any questions? Commissioner Drew.
Sean, I think last year was the first year that we made this change for Douglas County, and I think that was in response to some of the landowners' requests. Did this system seem to work better? Have we had any correspondence with the landowner?
A little bit. We had one
And the landowner is more acceptable with the way the process worked this past year?
Okay. Any further questions? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Move to approve wild turkey 2015-16 spring hunts 0135 and 0137 for Unit 192 of Douglas County, the units in Lyon County, and the units in Paradise Valley of Humboldt County, as presented by the department.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Drew, second by Commissioner McNinch. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Motion passed unanimous.
And lastly, for upland game birds and rabbits, we have recommended falconry season extending from September 1st through the last day of February. Daily bag limit of 2, possession limit of 8, limits singly in the aggregate for various species. All resident upland game birds except for turkey and sharp-tailed grouse. The taking of sage grouse by falconry is only allowed in those units where there is an established open season. Daily and possession limit for sage grouse and pygmy rabbit is 2 and 4.
Any questions? Seeing none, any public comment? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Commissioner Wallace? I was looking that way.
Move to approve the falconry seasons for upland game birds and rabbits for CR 1411 as presented by the department.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Wallace, second by Commissioner Drew. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed? Okay, motion passed unanimous. Your turn now, Russell.
Russell Wilson-Hume, fur bear staff biologist with Nevada Department of Wildlife. Fur-bearing animals, the fur-bearing animals seasons remain the same with the exceptions of last year, with the exceptions of the bobcat season and the gray fox season. The department recommends seasons for those species from December 1st to February 21st. And then also we have recommended pelt sealing dates across the state for the next biennium.
Okay. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Lane?
Mr. Chair, I do have a question of Russell. Russell, at the Clark County Cab, there was a discussion from John Sullivan, who said that an NDAL member had presented a number of statistics to them at the Nevada Trappers Association meeting. And I guess I'm a little frustrated because I don't have that information that was presented. So I don't know who presented the information, but could you tell us what some of that information was to talk about the reason for the change in the bobcat season?
I don't know specifically what that would be in reference to. What the department bases this off of is, as part of support material, there was a large spreadsheet with bobcat harvest data on it, and that the department uses that data to help us, give us guidance on season setting. Using that data, for the second consecutive year, we've had diminished kitten production, and it was quite low this last year. And based on that, we're recommending a shortened season, so that the shortened season will help us reduce take. So. Other than that, I'm not sure what information they may have been referring to specifically.
Well, I guess my concern would be, since this is for 2 years, so we're talking about the season for 2 years, correct?
Correct.
So what would happen if you continue to see that issue? I know we had this problem a couple of years ago, and it seemed to rebound, but what I guess my concern would be in doing it for 2 years is what, and obviously we're in a period of drought, what would action in other words, what you're saying is you're okay with this reduced season for the next 2 years?
Correct. However, if the data comes in next year and we see the trend continuing downward, we can come back in and do an amendment to this CR and change those seasons again. That's happened in the past for various species over the years where we've made changes.
Okay, and I guess my question would be, since you've reduced the gray fox season in line with the bobcat season, why wouldn't you reduce the red fox season as well so that they would all be in line with each other?
The reason why gray fox is separated out from the other fox species and we try to keep it in line contemporary season-wise with bobcat is because those two species, there's considerable overlap in the locations where they're trapped. The other two fox species, it's vastly different, and so if you're trapping specifically for red fox and kid fox, you're not as apt to catch a bobcat as you are if you're trapping for gray fox. And there's a number of individuals that, that will say, well, they're not apt to catch bobcat with gray fox, but it depends on the skill level of the trapper. So, but those other two species, typically there's little overlap between bobcat and their habitats, so we don't reduce those, and that's why they're separated out from the gray fox.
Commissioner Drew?
From a biological standpoint, Russell, is on the gray fox, is there a concern with the numbers on them, or is it more the overlap issue?
It's the overlap issue. There's biologically, there's nothing that has raised our concerns regarding gray fox harvests. It's just our recommendations are in shortening the bobcat season. The intent of that is to reduce bobcat take, and if the gray fox season is larger, then there's a possibility. It's not necessarily a given, but there is a possibility that bobcat can be taken, which in our viewpoint would somewhat defeat the purpose of shortening the bobcat season. And also because of the propensity for some trappers to catch bobcat, it leaves them with the dilemma of, if they catch a bobcat, what's next? Do we turn that bobcat out, back out of the trap set? If it's not going to make it, then they have to turn that bobcat into the department because it's out of season. And frankly, it can put them in a jeopardy of breaking laws if they don't follow either of those actions. And we just don't want to put them in that situation. I don't know if it would happen, but I don't want it to happen for the same reason why a few years ago we increased the area where you can take white dove in the state with mourning dove. It used to only be Clark and Nye County. There's an outside chance somebody could shoot one outside of that. Rather than putting the hunter in jeopardy of the law, I just expanded it so that if someone took it outside, they weren't breaking a law. It's just one of those things that why put someone in jeopardy of breaking a law if there's no need to. But biologically, to answer your question more directly, no, there's nothing biologically that would make me believe that we need to shorten the gray fox season.
Okay, any further questions, Russell? Commissioner McBeth.
I think we're going to get some testimony from the trappers on this issue and being able to distinguish. In other words, they seem to be able to, or feel they are able to specifically target the gray fox and not have take or very, very minimal take of bobcats. And I believe one of the things you said that may be true as to more experienced trappers, but less experienced trappers are more apt to catch bobcats. Is that really what your concern is?
And that's, of course, a generality, but, you know, we've, an experienced trapper is fairly well able to select for the species they want to take. But, you know, the number of trappers has increased in the last couple of years. Last year, our total trapper license sales was 1,487, and that was 187 trappers, more than the previous year. The number of people trapping for bobcat was about 100 higher than the long-term, the 10-year average. So, you know, you get novice trappers, new to the sport. There's a learning curve in anything that you do, and they're, generally speaking, they would be less likely to be able to set a trap that would be able to distinguish between differentiate on trapping those two species. And once again, I have absolutely no data to back that up. That's just the general feeling of the biologists as we had a discussion on the season setting this year.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll go out to public comment. Jana? We'll start with Jana and then Mr. Burnside.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the record, Jana Wright, resident of Clark County. I had a question at the CAB meeting on why there aren't any limits, any harvest limits set for fur-bearing animals. It seems like everything else that was discussed this morning in this category did have quotas, limits, etc., and I'm not understanding that part of it. And I thank Commissioner Lane for bringing up about the comment that was made that it appeared that the department had provided the Trappers Association data, but what I'm hearing Russell said, he doesn't have any recollection or knowledge of what that might be, but that's still kind of a question in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Burnside.
Craig Burnside, Douglas Cab. At our meeting, we voted to recommend that you do shorten the bobcat season, but leave the gray fox season as it is from November 1st through the end of February.
Joel?
For the record, Joe Blakesley, Nevada Trappers Association. I can answer Janet's questions. The reason we don't have limits stems back to the late 70s, when the bobcats first were regulated under the CITES Treaty, which is the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. At that time, the federal government told the states that they either had to come up with limits or population estimates. 4 states chose limits. The rest of them struggled with population estimates. It's a moving target that changes day to day throughout the year. There was actually an act of Congress in the early 80s that told the states that they did not have to come up with population estimates to manage wildlife. They recommended that the accepted techniques of using trend data, which is exactly what we're doing here, was perfectly acceptable. There are a couple of states that stayed with limits just because that's the way their mother did it for 40 years. But there was an actual act of Congress that came through that said we didn't have to do it that way. As far as the data being provided from NDOW, they've provided us with this data every year for the last 35 years. Because obviously we want to understand what's going on. We believe in science. And for that fact, we approved the shortening of the bobcat season. We did this, was it 6 years ago? We did not separate the gray fox season at that time. We have a concern with linking species like that. You could shorten the deer season because you could say somebody might poach an elk. You know, I don't think that's a place that we want to go. You could say the same thing about any terrestrial species: coyotes, badgers, skunks, raccoons. It's not a technique that I think would be productive or a good precedent. If you want to shorten gray fox, let's do it on science rather than what somebody might do or something that might happen. So that's about all I've got.
Randall, and then John. Randall.
Randall Stolborough for the record, representing myself and the opinions of quite a few people in northern Nevada. In northern Nevada, the gray fox, you find exactly with the bobcats, and our concern up there is, yes, there are individuals up there that would probably take advantage of trapping gray fox in the early part of the season, but to keep things clean, I think it's better to keep the gray fox season with the bobcat season, so we don't have any problems up there in northern Nevada. Thank you.
Thank you. John?
Yeah, John Sullivan for the record, speaking for myself. I'd like to talk about bobcats first and then gray fox. The big story probably is bobcats. The gray fox is kind of a minor issue. I think, as you can tell, not all the trappers are completely of the same viewpoint about that season. But the bobcats, Commissioner Lane, this report I received from NDOW was one I received as support material as a cab member in the Clark County cab. It wasn't sent to me because I'm a trapper in the Trapper Association. I received it in the mail as a cab member, and that's where I got the information. And when I talked to Pat Cummings, the biologist in the South, about it, it was in that context. It was so that's the reason I have this spreadsheet, is I got a support material because I'm a cab member in Clark County. I'm the only trapper on the cab too. The other 6 members are not trappers. But this spreadsheet is very interesting. Tells a lot of it has a lot of good data here. How bobcats are managed in Nevada is pretty unique. It's a superior program. It's probably the best program in the country. No other state takes the strain or the attention on a fur bearer like we do here. It's pretty extraordinary. And what this tells us is how well it's working. If you look at the total harvest data on the spreadsheet, it's over 3,000 bobcats are taken last year. That's a very high number. If we had a limit system, a quota system like the other states, if we were basing our bobcat harvest on total harvest, there would be no reason, no biological reason, to start reducing the season. But the kitten ratio, the kitten to a female ratio, is showing that we're starting to slip a little bit. It's not only the best predictor of the health of the species, it's an early predictor of the health of the species. If we went on total numbers harvested, which is 3,000 last year, if that's all we knew, if we were like the other states that don't take does not have the lower jaw data, that doesn't do it like we do, doesn't do all the work we do, both on the side of the biologists and the side of the trappers, we would not know, or we would not have this data, which indicates that we probably ought to start backing off on the season, on this species, on the bobcat species. And I support that 100%. And it's a pretty radical proposal. You know, bobcats is a premier species to trap in this state. It's certainly probably the highest pelt value of any animal in North America. We're talking about lopping off the whole state of November, the whole month of November. That will wipe out trapping. If we have a normal winter in the northern half of the state and get the normal amount of snow, normal amount of bad weather, there won't be any trapping in large parts of this state next year and the year after that, if we take this proposal to knock off the whole month of November and the last week of February. And I support that wholeheartedly because the data says we should do that. When we did it 6 years ago, we did the same thing. The data started slipping a little bit. We shut the season down by about a third, like we're doing this time, the whole month of November. 2 years later, the numbers bounced right back up. Kitten ratios went right back to normal or above normal, went back to normal season. This is almost picture perfect management as far as the bobcat's concerned. So I support the proposal from NDOW 100%. The Nevada Trapper Association endorsed it unanimously at the board meeting, and this is the way to manage fur bearers, in my opinion. And no other state's doing it half as well as we are here. Gray fox, you know, it's kind of 6 or 1, half a dozen.
John,
I can see the argument.
You've gone beyond the 3 minutes, but I'm going to let you continue on the gray fox. You are a member of the county advisory board down there, so we're kind of in a blurry line between Trapper Association and county advisory board, but you are a member of the CAB, so I'm going to let you continue so you can get it out. But we're going to try to hold everybody to 3 minutes, but you are a member of the CAB, so I'm going to let you continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll blurt it out quickly.
Okay.
All right. Gray fox kind of 6 of one, half a dozen the other. I support not coupling the season together. We have 88,000, the estimates are 88,000 gray fox in the state. The majority are probably in the south. We have people down there that are excellent trappers that trap gray fox, and only gray fox. And then when the season opens on bobcats, they trap bobcats. When we did this same program in the years 10 and 11, we separated the seasons. We did not shrink the gray fox season with the bobcat season. We kept the gray fox season the same, opening November 1st, and we shortened the bobcat season to December 1st. What happened was the species, the numbers came back fabulously for the gray fox, and there were 0 violations for 2 years for any enforcement problems. So the proof is in the pudding. You know, we can assume there'll be some problems. We can assume, you know, that people might be tempted to keep a gray fox when they shouldn't. But if for a 2-year period, we checked the data, it's available. There were 0 violations for anybody taking bobcats illegally during this period. So, in my opinion, the proof's in the pudding. We had a very good enforcement situation down there. So, my recommendation is to keep the gray fox season the same and to change the bobcat season to what NDOW recommends, which is December 1st opening and closing February 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Joe?
I think that was last, or close. Joe Krim, Persian Cab. We voted to go along with the department recommendations for the fur bearer seasons, with the exception on the gray fox and the bobcat season. What we voted on was to, if those season adjustment or the dates were adjusted, was it based on science only? If that's the only reason that it's based on, then we're okay with it. But if it's something else, then we weren't.
Thank you. Corey, and then Tracy, and then Joe.
For the record, Corey Lytle, Lincoln Cab. I actually have a couple things here that I want to point out. One of them has to deal with ceiling dates, and I'll go over that. The first thing I want to mention is our cab kind of took a further step on this. We had a lot of discussion on it, a very long discussion on it. We think economics is a strong driver with this, and we actually felt with the trend, the harvest trend, where it's heading, and what's happened the last couple of years, we actually voted to go December 1 to January 31 and actually shorten the season a little bit further. Kind of check ourselves, maybe in some respect get ahead of the curve. We also voted to parallel the gray fox and the bobcat. And so that was the first part of what I was going to point out. The second thing was in terms of ceiling dates. Whatever this commission decides, I've had several phone calls from trappers and guys that are trying to get their jaws turned in, get the cats sealed. And in Lincoln County, our sealing dates fall about a week before the trapping season is ended. And if, depending on what date is selected for the approval of the season, I would like to request a possible season date change for Panaca, both in 2015 and in 2016. And I spoke with our biologist, and he had no issue with it. And I just wanted to point out that if the date of February 21st were to be accepted as the closing of bobcat season, that the Panaca sealing dates for 2015 would be February 26th instead of February 12th, and then February 25th instead of February 11th. What happens is the guys will end up with maybe 1 or 2 pelts that need to be sealed, and they have to drive to Ely or drive somewhere else to get 1 or 2 things done, and it's a large inconvenience. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll go to Tracy. Oh, Karen, I'll get to you here in a minute.
Tracy Truman for the record. I appreciate the biological information the department has provided through the years. One thing I would like to point out, if it isn't already clear, is that the department doesn't do a knee-jerk reaction to data. Generally, when bobcat data or harvest information is not very good, we typically wait a couple of years. but NDOW waits a couple of years and then will recommend that the season be shortened. And so all I'm pointing out is that to the extent you're going to curtail the season based on, for example, 2 years of data, that we look at the season and say 2 years, and we say, what has the data done? If it's gone back up or it's positive, then I think we ought to be open to a discussion about whether we renew the season at the current date. Other than that, I don't have any problems with the bobcat date. When I do would request a change is on the gray fox. I would like to see it open on November 1. I don't care about the closing date. I don't care if you mirror the bobcat closing date, but I do, for a couple of reasons on the November 1 opening, is that some areas are inaccessible after December 1. Like everyone else, I'm hoping for lots of snowfall this year, but if we get it, some of the areas, even in Clark County, are inaccessible, and really the only real season you have for gray fox is the November season. In 09-010, when we did have the shortened bobcat season, but the regular fox season, I had no issue with catching bobcats. I think I caught 2 in those 2 years. Was able to successfully release both of them. I caught them both again after December, so they obviously survived, had no problems, and I think I probably trapped gray fox harder than anyone else. In those years, I think I was probably averaging during the month of November somewhere around 15 to 30 gray fox a day, a check. So I think I catch as many, I have as many opportunities to catch a bobcat as anyone else. And I tell you, it happens so rarely. The analogy that Russell provided with, if you saw a collared dove and thought it was a mourning, or saw a mourning dove and vice versa, the dove analogy doesn't work because the dove is dead. When it hits the ground, it's dead. We can't change our mind about whether or not it was, we should have pulled the trigger. With a trap, we can simply release it. And the last thing I'll say, because I'm probably out of time, is that if you agree with this proposal to leave the gray fox season as it is, the Nevada Trapper Association will provide a workshop at the Trapper Education Day on how to successfully release a bobcat in case that does happen, because the point's been brought up that newer, more inexperienced trappers are more likely to run into this situation. And I'd also point out that newer and more inexperienced trappers are more likely to come to our events because that's where they gain information. So I think we can address Russell's concern that we may have inexperienced trappers run into this issue because we can gather most of those at this event, teach them what to do and how to avoid it. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up, and then Karen, you'll be next.
Jim Curran, I'm representing the Churchill County Wildlife Advisory Board. The fur bearer seasons were discussed. A vote was taken of the 5 board members. They totally accepted the department's recommendation for beaver, mink, muskrat, otter, kitten, red fox, and also the bobcat season. They disagreed with the gray fox proposal from the department. Their recommendation is November 1st through February 28th, which is a historical season, and to keep the cat and the gray fox season separate during those years where a reduction in the cat season is required by the science that we've been provided. So, thank you.
Karen?
Karen, excuse me, Karen Taylor, Washoe County resident since childhood. I want to applaud some folks who are really trying to look at this whole issue on a scientific basis. However, I want to reiterate what I did 2 years ago in Elko. This is management based on dead animals and self-report. And although self-report can be a valuable science tool, self-report by itself is very poor science. I want to read something from the Journal of Business and Psychology, Understanding Self-Report Bias in Organizational Behavior. If actual behavior true score is undesirable, participants fear the repercussions of reporting it to researchers. And this isn't just for trappers, this would be for any of us. If we think that what we're reporting is going to have a negative impact on us, we are not necessarily going to be reporting accurate data. So I think what I'd like to see is management of our resources done in a different way. And maybe the problem is worse than we think. If folks are reporting there's no kittens and some of this other data based on self-report and observation by trappers, perhaps the situation is even worse than we think. And I would also like to take a look at what variables are really being tested with this. What's the hypothesis? Where's the science? We learned from that nice young man who did his project. He's a trapper who did his project. He was talking about how male coyotes have a wider range than female coyotes in terms of how they operate. And I'm wondering if the same thing is happening with bobcats. And where are we looking at ranges? What are the variables? What does all this mean other than just a sheet with numbers? Thank you.
Thank you. Rex?
Rex Flowers, representing Washoe County. We voted to support NDOW's recommendations as presented. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon Ireland, for the record, Clark County. As far as the self-reporting and the the fear of psychology analysis we got here, as far as bobcat goes, we never said that there's no kittens. There's a concern for a lower litter production ratio, and as far as the self-reporting, we account for every single bobcat that we catch because of the CITES cards. We have to turn in their jaw, we have to bring them into NDOW, have them inspected, and have them sealed. So there's really no kind of lying about what you got as far as bobcats are concerned.
Mr. Reese, and then Mr. Stillwater.
For the record, Mike Reese, president of the Southern Nevada Coalition for Wildlife. We looked at this as kind of like a prescription that a doctor gives you. Back 2010, 2011, when the same thing came up, we shortened the bobcat season for a reason. The prescription was let's change it and see if it doesn't come back. It came back. We didn't administer anything for any other fur bearer, i.e. the gray fox. Therefore, on this one, we see it as pretty much the same thing that's happened. Our data tells us it's time to change the season dates on bobcats, and we have. And to tie the bobcats in with the gray fox is us almost trying to deal with two different diseases, and it doesn't necessarily work. The cure may or may not. We would like to see the gray fox stay as November 1st and go to the end of February, or February 21st, and then the bobcats go to December 1st down to February 21st. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stillwater.
Dave Stillwater, Las Vegas. The Bobcat data report is the best stuff probably in the world on the data. The only questions that I have, people wonder, well, how do you know it's true? Well, there might be something to that, because I think I caught 5 kittens in Clark County, and I think there's only like 11. And I know somebody else that caught 2, but I trust the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I think they do a good job. We work together in sound science. With sound science, we got to do things. And this is, we're in agreement with the bobcat season. Now the gray fox season, we got all kinds of gray fox. We need to keep the season the same. From open to closing from last year, November 1st to the end of February. There's been nobody that's been caught taking an animal out of season. Personally, if someone got caught, that's good as far as I'm concerned. A thief should be caught, a poacher should be caught, and if they're caught, the honest person has more places to trap. Thank you.
Come on up. Yeah.